Hello there, my name is Laura, and in this video I'll be going over the basics of color theory. How to make a color wheel, some of the terminology that may be unfamiliar to you, how to make tints, tones and shades, and some of the most popular color palettes that you can use in your paintings to make them harmonious and well balanced. So for this video I'll be using the Liquitex Professionals Heavy Body Acrylics. This is a kit that I haven't tried before. I have been searching so much to find the perfect color kit that is both economical. It doesn't have a whole lot of extra paints that you're not gonna need, so this seemed to be the best choice. Let's see how it performs. So let's get into that. Alright, welcome to my color palette. Let's see what colors we have here. We have Quinacridone Crimson, Yellow Medium Azo, Phthalo Blue, and Transparent Mixing White, Titanium White, and Ivory Black. Now, theoretically, you're not really going to need the Ivory Black, but it really can come in handy if you just want to make something with white and black in the future. I didn't actually realize there were two whites in here, and I've never used a Transparent Mixing White, so we'll see how that does. Let's put these onto the palette. So red, yellow, and blue. These are our primary colors. Well, they're called primary because you cannot mix them from any other color. And from these colors you can make any color that you want to use, any color of the rainbow, as it were, except for white, which is no color when you're talking about paints. So we're gonna see how these mix. Initially I wanted to buy a kit that had a warm red, a cool red, a warm yellow, a cool yellow, and a warm and a cool blue. So a warm and cool version of each color. However, I didn't find such a kit that didn't have extra greens, and I have been using religiously for the past couple of years now the Golden Open Acrylics. And the Golden Open Acrylics, I really love them a lot because they dry a lot slower than regular acrylics. They're a lot like oil paints in that regard. So they allow you to mix your paints for a long time. So if you're going for a planner painting session, those are perfect. And I'm just going to put some of this mixing white here in a corner. Now you see I put quite a bit of paint, and when you're doing these kind of exercises or for your painting, it's better to mix more paint so you don't have to keep mixing paint as you go. Especially with this kind of stay wet palette, it's so convenient because your paints can stay wet and workable for weeks, even these regular acrylics, if you just put the lid on really tight. And I'm not using the sponge and paper setting that came with this plastic Stay Wet palette. It's a Masterson Stay Wet palette. This is the lid, and it comes with a sponge and a paper. However, I really like this glass palette that I purchased separately that fits perfectly in here. So these are our primary colors. Out of these primary colors, you're gonna make all of the secondary colors. So let's do that now. You're gonna take some red, and whatever I mix with yellow, I'm gonna put a lot less of the other paint because yellow is the weakest paint. So you're gonna use a lot more yellow than any other paint than the red or the blue to make basically an equal amount of pigment mixture. So this immediately I'm seeing as it's a lot more reddish than orange. I'm gonna add just a little, I'll take some aside because it's gonna take me too much to make that into orange. So whenever you feel like your paint is not quite the color that you want, just try to take some of that aside and mix, especially if you're mixing something like yellow, which has very weak covering power. Okay, this is a pretty nice orange, I would say. This is an orange. Okay, then the secondary color, not that they're really in any order, is, I'm going to take a nice glob of this right here. I'm going to take some of this blue. So yellow and blue makes green. It's a nice, strong green. It's just perfect. So when you're mixing your colors, make sure that you move them around and smash them into the palette so that they mix. And also try to corral them into a nice little puddle so they don't rise so fast. I like to clean my palette in between dipping into the other paints so that they don't get contaminated. Okay, I'll just take a little bit of blue. The phthalo blue tends to be super strong, so I think it's the strongest of all of the hues, of all of the paints, really, I think. Well, black is also very strong. So here, you see, when I mix red and blue together, we are supposed to get a nice purple. I'm gonna take more red because red is weaker than blue in this case. In order to get a nice purple, you're gonna need more red paint. And it is very dark, so in order to see this, you're gonna want to mix a little bit of white to really see the color of it. But I feel like I need a little more red in there. So I was initially a little worried about purple. Purple is one of those colors that it's hardest to mix a clean purple from a red and a blue, especially if it's not a cool red like an alizarin crimson or a quinacridone magenta or any magenta, and a warm red, a warm blue like an ultramarine blue or a phthalo blue red shade, which are all both warmer reds. Okay, so this is a nice purple, but since you cannot see it, I'm gonna take a little bit of this white paint and I'm gonna take some of this purple so you can really see the color of it a lot easier when you mix it with the white. When the mixture is too dark, this is how you really make sure that it's the color that you want. And it is a nice purple. Now we have our secondary colors, orange, green, and purple. Now let's do our tertiary colors. Our tertiary colors are the colors that we mix from red, orange, orange, yellow, yellow, green, green, blue. So the colors that we mix from the primary colors with the secondary colors right next to them. So that gives us our tertiary colors. So we're gonna take some of this orange, red, some of this red, and maybe a little less red because I already have a little bit of orange. Let's take some of this orange. Okay. Then let's take some of this orange and take some of our yellow. This will give us our orange yellow or yellow orange, like a tangerine, creamsicle sort of color. A yellow orange. Okay, and we're gonna take some of our yellow and a touch of this green, and this will give us a yellow green or kind of chartreuse. I'm gonna add just a little bit more yellow. I want it to be warmer, a little yellower, more lima green. And it just so happens that I always end up using yellow is the color that I run out of the most. Okay, That is all right. It could be a little yellower, but let's put a little more yellow here. We do want to arrive at the effect that we want to arrive, so let's spare no expense, because I want the color to be pretty color. Okay, yellow green. It could be even more yellow, but it's okay. Then if we mix green with blue, like half and half, maybe I think I need to add more green. And this is a beautiful blue-green. I really do like this one. Maybe I could use a little more green, but it already looks green. And then the blue and the purple, maybe half and half. I did use a little more purple than blue. We're gonna get an indigo here. And when we mix this with the red, the quinacridone crimson, we're gonna get a beautiful violet color. That is just gorgeous. Okay, so let's actually transfer these to a paper, and then we're gonna make our color wheel with these. Now that we have them all mixed, let's make a color wheel, and you can make the color wheel along with me if you like. So just take a piece of paper, any piece of paper. If you have a compass, that is perfect. If you don't have a compass, it's all right. Then you can just use a lid or a bowl or something, and then you're gonna make 2 concentric circles. I'm trying to get this back in there. Okay. And then we're gonna do our primary colors, and we're gonna do our secondary colors right in the middle, and we're gonna do our tertiary colors. Oh, that's all right. It's gonna be dark anyway. Okay. So let's start with primary colors. Red, it doesn't have to be pretty or perfect. Okay. And this is a very nice red actually. It tends to be a little cooler, it tends to be a little pinker. However, it makes a beautiful orange, so I'm not complaining about it. And the second primary color is yellow. And we have our third primary color, blue. And this blue is nice, and it's a nice blue. So I'm slightly diluting the paint so that you can see them. The transparency of the paper shows through. Okay, then let's do secondary colors. First secondary color. Oh, I dipped in the wrong orange. It's okay, I got it. I got the right one now. Orange. Now we have green, blue and yellow. Then we have our purple. This one have to get a little diluted. Okay, purple. It's a beautiful purple. I'm just so surprised. Okay, so these are our secondary colors. Then tertiary colors. We have our red orange. Then we have our yellow orange. It's very transparent, this, because of the yellow. Then we have our yellow green, or chartreuse. It's kind of a chartreuse or a lime green. It's really pretty in my eyes. Then we have our teal or blue green, which is also a very pretty color in my eyes. We have our indigo or blue purple. And lastly, but not leastly, we have our violet or red purple. It's only a letter away from violet, and somehow I feel like it matches with that adjective as well, this color. Okay, so here you have the color wheel. This one came a little bit darker than I thought it would, but these are your primary colors, your secondary colors, your tertiary colors. You combine these in various ratios and add white, add black. You have yourself the ingredients for any recipe of a painting that you could possibly need. So this is everything you need. You can paint anything with just red, yellow, and blue, and you have everything. So the first thing you will notice about this color palette is that all of these colors are extremely bright, and what we call in the artist world saturated. They are saturated with color, which means that they are the brightest, most pure pigments that you can use. However, when you paint your painting, very rarely will you use a paint that is just this particular hue, this strength of color, unless this is like a highlight or an accent color. The other thing that you will notice when you look at these colors is that some are really warm and some are really cool. So this is how we divide them also into warm colors, which are these colors starting with red, orange, yellow. So everything that contains red and yellow is warm, and also the yellow green is warm, and the green is kind of considered borderline. So let's say right through here you cut the line between warm and cool. So let's cut a line to divide these. Already we have parties in our colors. So these are warm and these are cool colors. So since these are the pure color, and you most likely are gonna need to mix them with something else to tone them down, that is to make them a little more muted, a little more natural and workable. How do you do that? Well, one thing to do it is to add either white or black. However, that will really destroy the color. Another way to do that is to add the complement of the color. So what is the complement of a color? Complementary colors are colors that are exactly directly opposite from each other on the color wheel. So since you have this, you will always know that the complementary of red is green, the complementary of yellow is purple, complementary of blue is orange. So you'll notice that the complement of every primary color is the secondary color that combines the other two primary colors. So immediately you're gonna think, how do I dull down red? I know, I'll add some green. That is also a very good way for you to create a very nice brown. So you can make a brown with complementary colors. So you can mix. You ever heard when you mix yellow and purple together, don't put them together, they're gonna make brown. So you can make various shades of brown by combining complementary colors. Also, when you need to make the shadow of an object, you also use the opposite color on the color wheel. So blue and orange, those also make a shade of brown. If you're gonna make a painting and use these opposite colors, for example red and green, such a classic Christmas color palette, you say blue and orange, so many companies use these complementary colors to attract your attention. They're very pleasing and contrasting to the eye, and that really draws attention. So if you want to make a painting and you use complementary colors, not exactly straight pure from the tube like this, but you kind of tone them down, use different proportions of each color. You never want to use 50-50. That's just gonna be kind of not very harmonious. So you're gonna use 70-30, 60-30, 10% accent color, and so on. So let's do some color experiments to show you how you can make brown by or how to tone down your colors by using complementary colors. Another thing I'm gonna mention real quick, if you mix the red, yellow and blue, so of these primary colors in equal proportions, like not equal amount of paint but equal pigment concentration, you will arrive at black. So you can make a really nice black by just using these, and then by adding white you can tone that down to make grays. You can lighten it up. So let's tone down some red, shall we? I'm gonna take some red over here. Let's take a little bit of this green, and let's see how it's gonna make this red a little bit duller, a little bit darker also. So if you don't add any white, you can make an object, a red object, for example, a red shoe or something, or a cherry, and then you want to paint the shadow of that cherry or shoe. You can just add green, and this is What a beautiful shade. It didn't lose any of the vibrancy. If you would add black, for example, let's do that. I'm gonna add some black just to compare and see if we lose some of that pigment, and just a tiny bit of black, because black is very strong. Maybe a tiny more of black. So you still get a pretty nice dark red. That also speaks to the quality of these pigments. So this is still nice, but this is a little more brownish, so it's a little warmer, a little more natural. You could use either one. For red it works, for blue it works, for yellow not gonna work. So if you wanna darken yellow with, how do you darken yellow? Let's just take some yellow aside, a little more, and we're gonna add the complementary color, which is purple. So we're going for a nice dark yellow. So here you see it's nice, and it's a darker version of that. But if you were to, let's do it also here, let's add a touch bit of black to that. Let's see what we get. So if you add black to yellow, you get more of a green, you see. So if you're painting foliage or you're painting a nature picture and you have just yellow and black, you can make a wonderful green with yellow and black. Kind of a sappy green, more of a natural green. But if you were to paint a banana, for example, and want to make the shadows of a banana, you wouldn't get this green as a shadow. Instead, you would get a warmer shadow. So by adding purple to it, you can make it a lot more naturally dark yellow. Also, you could use a burnt umber to make a darker shade of yellow. So burnt umber also works to darken colors as well. And let's try that with the blue. And last time I tried it with the blue and the orange, it really made it green. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of this orange. Otherwise, it's really gonna turn it green. So see, it's a lot more green. So I would actually, in this case, all pigments are a little bit different. So in this case, to overcome the green, what would you add? You would add a little bit of red to that. So you can dull down blue with a reddish orange, I would say, in this case, because the pigments are different. Or you can just use burnt umber to darken or to dull down blue, or even black, because blue is such a strong pigment. It really takes a lot to kill that. However, green will make it, yellow will make it green. We have our complementary colors. Now you know that complementary colors, you can use them to transform colors with its complementary. Let's talk about tints, shades, and tones. What are they? So we know how to darken a color. Now, how do you lighten a color? You can lighten a color by adding white to it. That would be called a tint. So a color plus white. Or you can add yellow to it as well if it's a red. So if it's a warm color, you can lighten it with adding a little bit of yellow. Also green, you can lighten it with yellow. Blue, not really. You would need to add white to that. Okay, so a tint is a color plus white. Let's make some tints then. Let's take teal this time. So let's get this nice teal color. It's more of a greenish color. Okay, let's add a little bit of white to that. Okay, and let's, okay, So when you add a little bit of white to that, you get it a little bit lighter. You can see that you can see the color a lot better. Now you can, if you keep adding white, we're gonna get an even lighter version of that. And if you keep adding white, eventually you're gonna start losing the color altogether. So these are tints. You just keep, and if you want to make the lightest version of that color, then you would start with white and add just a smidge of the other color in there. Then let's do shades. Shade is a color plus black. Let's do a lighter color, otherwise we're just not going to see it. Let's do green. So starting by adding a little bit of green. And we're gonna add a little more green. You're just going for an equal progression in the color. Then let's add more black. Until eventually it's really difficult to even see the green. And then you have a tone. I keep talking about toning down a color. What does that mean? It means to make it less saturated, to make it less vibrant or colorful. So the easiest way to do that is you would add the color plus gray to make it a little more dull. You don't change the value, but you do change the saturation. So let's say saturation, how vibrant or pure a color is. Let's make a gray, black, we got our white. Let's see what color. Let's choose orange. A little bit of gray. This was probably too big of an increment. And let's add more gray. So you can see how it starts dulling down the more gray I add to it. And then finally, can we even see that there was an orange underneath? You can still see that it's slightly warm, kind of like a clay color. It's not a bad color, it's actually quite nice. Okay, saturation. Another thing, another term that I haven't touched on yet is hue. Is the color underlying any particular color that you see in nature, the pure color underneath. The unsaturated color, that's what hue is. So it's pretty much the color. Say, what is the hue of this? You would say it's green, even though it has black in it. What is this hue? Well, it's teal or it's blue, because that is the color before we added anything to it. If you see a color like this, for example, what is this hue? Well, you'd say it's brown, even though brown, I suppose it could be a hue, but this is a light brown. If you see, let's say, my sweater, it is a grayish blue, but the hue is blue, and this hue is red or magenta, let's say, even though it's pink, or you can say it's purple, I suppose. So hue is really the color that is unadulterated. Say for sap green, the color is green. For burgundy, the hue is red. And for chartreuse, the hue is green. Let's talk about value. Value is one of the most important terms or fundamentals in painting theory. Value is very important. So even though it doesn't involve color, value is how light or dark a color is. So it can range from really, really light to really, really dark. And so let's make a value scale to see what range in value is. Let's grab some white and more black. So you can make a value scale that is 1 to 10. You can make a value scale that's 1 to 20. You can make a value scale that's 1 to 4. Really, all that we're looking for is how it ranges in lightness, light to dark. So if you're gonna make a value scale, let's start with the complicated one. Let's start with let's see how far we get. So this is white. We add just a touch of black to that. We get a gray. Okay, this is not gonna be. Let's see how far we can push it. All you're looking for here is a small increment in darkness. It just has to be slightly darker than the one before. So what I'm doing here on the palette is I'm just adding more black to that pile, to the puddle of white here. So I'm just adding a touch more black every time, and it darkens. And if it's not dark enough, I can just add a touch more. One thing to keep in mind with acrylic paints is that they always dry darker than when you put them on a canvas. So if you're trying to match a color, you're gonna sometimes have to make it a little bit lighter than the color that you're matching, because it will dry darker. Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I went too light. Now I'm overcompensating, but it's okay, because we can always, so the darkest should be just pure black. And you can see a slight increase in darkness from one to the next. However, when you're painting, very rarely are you going to use a 1 to 10 value scale. More often, you're going to be using a 1 to 5 or 1 to 4. So let's do that. The increments are going to be a little bit bigger, but it's a little bit simpler and easier. For example, you're going to use the first 2 for the light, and then the last 2 for the shadow. And then the last would be just pure black. What I do sometimes is the very first one will not be white. It'll be kind of like an off-white, slightly gray. So it'll be kind of like this instead of white. And then I do reserve a very light white highlight for the very first color. So this could be also a little bit lighter, I think. Yeah. Okay, that's better. So this is a very effective 1 to 4 value scale. So when you're painting, you can compare the lightness of the colors that you're using. Ideally, in a painting, you'll be using the whole range of values. However, there are paintings that are high key. High key means that they're only use light values, or low key. Low key are paintings that only use the darker values. So high key would be just this, very light paintings, and low key just this, quite dark paintings. Just think Rembrandt and those kind of dark, moody paintings. Now let's touch a little bit on color palettes. What kind of colors should you use for your paintings? Color palettes. In no particular order, but some of the most popular color palettes include the complementary color palette. Complementary color palette, as the name suggests, uses complementary colors: red and green, orange and blue. I'm just citing the most common primary and direct secondary color palette. Those are the most popular ones. Red plus green, orange, blue, yellow, purple. And now that you know, you're probably going to see a lot of these in a lot of advertisements or companies using them because they're very eye-catching. Then you have the analogous. Analogous colors are the ones that are colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. For example, it would be red, orange, yellow, or red, orange, orange. It could be these three colors. It could be even like a range of blue, purple, blue, and green. So it could be a range really, but important is that they are close to each other and they really work together, because in nature you kind of see this gradient of colors that are very close to each other, and they work because they're in the same family. So whatever's in the same color family, they are very harmonious. Then you have a split complementary color palette, just like the name suggests, are colors that would be complementary, only instead of saying red green, you say red this color and this color. So the ones that are close to each other on the opposite side. So the variations of the complementary could be split complementary, just to simplify that. Then we have triadic colors that are in a triangle. So for example, the most famous triangle of colors is the primary colors. So the primaries, or the most popular, would be probably the secondary. Just think Halloween, orange, green, purple. Those are the most famous colors together. If you look at the monarch butterfly on a lavender flower, you get the orange, you get the green, you get the purple. Very natural. Now, or you get the tertiary colors, you can use those. So those are triadic color palettes. Those are very colorful generally. Again, you wouldn't use 50-50-50. There's no 50-50-50. You wouldn't use them in an equal amount. Don't do 33-33-33. You'd use more of a progression, more of a different, say 60-30-10. You could use a 50-30-20 even works. Again, variation on those hues are more pleasing than the actual bright colors in general. There are exceptions to the rule. Then you have the tetradic. Again, this one is very colorful. They're the colors that are in a rectangle here, like this. Or let's say, so it just skips one. So it skips one color. It's a basically complementary color palette. It's a double split complementary to make it easy. So instead of having red and green, you'd have purple, red, orange, teal, and lime green. So again, you would have to refer to the color palette to really make that up. But it's a complex complementary palette, or a double complementary. And then you have the square color palette is when you skip two, so, or red, orange, yellow. It's just colors that are in a square here. Very colorful color palette, and you see it in colorful paintings. Lastly, and my favorite color palette, is the monochromatic. As the name implies, it's one color. So one color, or just gray, different tones, tints, shades, with just one color. Those are some of the most harmonious color palettes in my mind. I just think sepia, think any black and white painting. Those are monochromatics. This is it for the theory. Now let's do some practical exercises to put all this theory into practice. So to put all this theory to good use. Okay, so I'm gonna clean this up real quick, and then we're gonna match some colors. That is one of the most exciting parts of color theory, is getting to know how to make the color that you want to make. Let's get to mixing some colors, mixing and matching colors, color matching. So we have this brush cleaner and preserver. Let's match this color. When you want to match a color, you have to think about three things: hue, saturation, and value. First, you want to see what color is this. So this is brown. And how do you get brown? You mix red, yellow, and blue. We're gonna start with the yellow and the red, and we're gonna make a nice orange first, and then we're gonna add the blue in there to darken it. Brown is basically dark orange, so just a little bit of this blue. It instantly turned it green. Okay, now how do we change this from green? How do we make it more brown? We add the red, which is the opposite. It's still quite green, so we're gonna add more red to it to tone it down and make it brown. We're also rhyming over here. Okay, so second thing we do is actually value. So how dark is it? This is very dark, and I think we're gonna need a little more red. So then we're gonna have to add white. But since this color is so light, we're actually going to put some white aside and then add some of this color to it. When you want to mix a really light color, you generally start with white and then you add the color to it. So we got the white, let's add a touch of this brown to it. I think we can add a little bit more. And when you're color matching, hold your palette knife to the object and always add increments, very small increments of color. So gradually try to get up. Maybe that was too much. That might have been too much. See, when you add too much, when you don't have patience, you can add too much, then you can make your life quite difficult, because then you have to keep going back and adjust. We're still not quite there, and I think I need a little more red in my mixture. So let's add just a touch bit of red in there. Just add it in my whole mixture. And then I add some of this here. I find color matching to be very satisfying. Almost there, where it needs to be more orange. So just a touch more yellow, a touch more red. Let's see, have we done too much? You'll find that color matching is a back and forth game. And you're going very similar. It's more yellow, more yellow, more yellow, just a touch. Okay, have a good feeling about this. This is very similar. If we put it on, you see it's a bit dark. It's a bit dark and grayish. It's too grayish, so it needs more yellow, more red, and a touch of white. Okay, let's see about it now. I would say that is the color. What do you think? If we put it on, it's similar. It's a little bit dark. Now we put it on. I would say it's similar. Maybe more yellow and more red. Okay, there we go. Let's color match this remote. Again, it's a brown, so we're gonna start with red and yellow and blue, red, yellow, red, touch of blue. I think I put too much yellow. Not enough red. That's it, not enough red. Actually, this is a very reddish brown. So I think we're gonna need more red. Okay, so we see that our mixture is much too dark. So we're gonna need to get some white in there. Lighten that up a little bit. Now, still too dark, but let's see. Too brown, we're gonna need more red, and could need more yellow. Now, I think we're gonna need more yellow. Let's put that little bit of white in there. More white. I don't want to put it all in. I just want to go gradual, because sometimes white can be quite strong. Let's see. Ooh, we're almost there. We're almost there, actually. A touch more white. Hope it's not too much. I don't think so. Let's see. Wow, are we there? A bit too dark, so let's add just a touch of white. So that, I would say, is the color. What do you think? If we put it on, it almost blends in. From a certain angle it does blend in. Now you have to remember, when you when you color match, make everything a little bit lighter because it will dry darker. Let's do one more thing. We're gonna take a sip of coffee. Still warm. Let's recreate that color. Let's make that sort of aqua color. So we're gonna start with, since that's a really light color, whenever I do light colors, I like to start with white. And I'm just gonna put a little bit of white there. Now it's a blue hue, so I'm gonna add a little bit of white. Ooh, that brown. And then the smallest touch of yellow, I could add some green, but let's just see. Now we're just using primary colors, so I want to make it warm, but I don't want to make it too green. Well, if we make it too green, then we're just going to add red. See how little bit of blue I put in there, and it really darkened this color. Definitely needs more yellow. And a little more yellow. Ooh, we are close, but still a bit dark. So let's take some of this white. Oops, I'm gonna make a mess. And like I said, I'm just going to lighten up a little bit, like a corner, because to lighten all that big pile is gonna take too much white, and I don't want to do that. So let's just lighten a little bit and see how we do. That is similar. Let's see. Put it on. It's still a little bit blue. So I'm gonna add just the tiniest bit of yellow and hope it's not gonna turn it green. Now we have overdone it. So we're just gonna add some of this blue back in. Now whenever you're mixing larger amounts of paint, you have a little bit more freedom with how fast you can really change a color, because it's gonna take more yellow to change it if you're going to mix a larger quantity of paint. I'm tired of this transparent mixing white. I'm just gonna use some titanium white, which is actually going to lighten things up. Okay, I would say that's the color. Yep, that is the color. So this is how you go about matching, color matching. You find the hue, you add your complementary, you add whatever you need to make that color, then you add a dark, a light. So this is how you go about mixing colors, how to match your colors. I hope you enjoyed this color theory, first lesson of color theory, and I will see you in one of the next classes. So until next time, stay creative, trust the flow. Bye bye.